At this point, what could it hurt? If Nick Hogman was telling jokes, this episode could have been saved.
Pew pew! Pew pew! Run, 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 run. Welcome to Podages, your critically nostalgic analytical tour through Digimon anime. I'm your host, Jeff Ruberg. This week we're discussing Digimon Adventure 2020, Episode 18, Countdown to Tokyo's Annihilation. And I have a special guest this week. It's my boyfriend, Erik. Hey.
Hello.
So I have my normal list of first-time guest questions. I know some of these answers for you, but I don't know others, so...
Should we see if you can guess my answers?
Maybe.
Is this going to be a test of our relationship?
Oh god, I'm gonna fail this quiz. So how did you get into Digimon?
You tell me.
I don't know.
Well, I started watching Adventure when it came on. I think it was Fox Kids or Kids WB, whatever it was.
It was Fox Kids.
Okay. Thank you for the live fact checking. I started watching it. I think I actually catch the premiere of it, and then I started watching it from then. And then I just kept watching as new series came out.
And so were you mainly into the V-Pets, the toys, the anime, or mainly just the anime?
That was mainly the anime. I did get the original Digimon cards, and so in my childhood bedroom in the closet in some storage compartment, there's probably still like a card folio or a card binder with all the cards and sleeves and stuff.
Wow, and you give me so much hassle for collecting the new cards. Wow.
I never played with them. They were really just to look at.
And I heard word on the street that your really sweet boyfriend got you one of the new V-Pets, and you let your Digimon die and poop everywhere over and over because you couldn't be bothered to deal with the noises. What do you say about that?
I really like to take this time to talk about taxes.
Oh god. Okay.
I don't mind the noises.
You did mind the noise. I minded the noises.
It was constant disappointment. I fed them, and there was just more poop than I was ready for.
Well, on that note, so which seasons have you seen?
I think you can answer this. Would you really tell me what seasons I've seen?
You've seen all of the standard one? Well, what standard? You've seen Adventure, 02, Tamers, Frontier, and recently Data Squad, and not any of Cross Wars of Fusion or Atmon?
I've seen I've seen everything except Atmon.
Oh, okay. Well, you haven't... Did you keep watching Fusion after the part that was dubbed?
Yeah, I watched the sub part of it.
Oh, okay. Fine.
I only because I wanted to see the crossover part at the end. Spoilers.
It's not any good. So, and I think your favorite season is Adventure.
Yes, I think it's playing the nostalgia, and I also think it kind of has maybe not the best story, but I think it just has the closest place to my heart since it was the first one I watched.
I just don't really get the impression that any of the other seasons left that big of an impression on you.
I mean, you can only reuse all the other ones are just reusing Agumon over and over again.
Oh god, that's not true. That's a single one of them.
Now he has boxing gloves.
That's just Data Squad.
Oh, Data Squad.
You didn't give Data Squad its credit. Anyway, and I think your favorite Digimon... I have a guess, but I don't think that's right. So just tell me your answer.
Okay, it's going to be Magna Angemon.
Oh, okay.
What did you think it was?
Well, I was going on the wrong track. I was going to say Patamon, but then...
I mean, it's sort of there. I think Patamon's a cute little bean. But I think if I had to pick the favorite, I think Magna Angemon looks the coolest and was really just a one-shot killer in the anime.
We only got a scene.
I had 2 scenes. Patamon Digimon twice. Once in Adventure and once in 02.
And
for 2 seconds.
I think your favorite... I don't know your favorite villain. Since you love Data Squad, it's definitely Kurata, I'm sure.
Oh boy. Was there a villain in Data Squad? They were there for 2 episodes and they were gone.
Humanity is the villain in Data Squad.
My favorite villain's my husband because he's like a gay vampire.
Because you're basic, I know, I get it.
No, because it was adventure and the nostalgia. I just really liked it. Like he is the only villain in Adventure before the Dark Masters that actually lasted many episodes of them not being able to destroy them, whereas Dark Masters somehow they were able to defeat them 2 episodes after being them.
And I think your favorite adventure character is TK, which is kind of why we decided to have you on. Not we. Oh my god. Well, I mean, the 2 of us decided for you to be on this episode because we thought it was going to be a TK heavy episode. Or we thought TK was finally going to do something.
Yeah, and we were very wrong.
Yeah. And also we both just moved. So it was very hectic in this week, and we were recording this, oh God, on Friday, almost a week late. So
Friday
oh,
early morning.
oh God, you're right. Yeah, it's Friday at 1 a.m. So it's very late, and we've been very busy with moving and stuff and unpacking. And technically we finished unpacking, but I just still have most of my stuff on the floor. So it's been a week, and this was an episode. Okay, wait. So last question, last lightning round question. I don't have any guess for this. What's your hottest Digimon take?
You don't have a guess for this? It's the polar opposite of your opinion.
Which one?
That I actually enjoyed Try.
Oh God! Oh right.
I watched the sub
I
version
don't want to
because
acknowledge
the
his
dub
opinion.
wasn't out yet, and then I watched the dub version again, and then I watched it again with friends after. So I've seen it 3 times at least,
Great. I have no comment.
and that's why I'm not invited on the podcast.
Uh, hmm.
Do you want to unpack this?
I don't want to. I feel like I have to, but I don't want to. So I guess we're not going to
We can have this
unpack it.
conversation off the podcast.
Oh God. So I know this I know this vaguely because we've been watching the episodes together and discussing as we watch and stuff. But for listeners, how have you been feeling about Adventure 2020 overall so far?
I've been very hot and cold about it since I feel like in the beginning I wasn't really sure who the series was for. Was it for old fans? Was it for new fans? Because there's a lot.
For OnlyFans.
There's a lot of parts that they left out that old fans can just fill in the blank. But then if you're a new fan watching it, it's like, well, how do they know this information? Are they really getting the most out of the series without the knowledge, like the connection to TK and Kari? And then it was a lot of like catching up. It's like, okay, new evolution. But I kind of like that they also sped through the ultimate form, so now there could be new stuff. So it wasn't just recycling of the old series.
And going into this episode, like last week, the one with Orochimaru, I was very negative. I think even as we were watching, but you weren't that negative about it, right? You were pretty positive.
I actually really enjoyed the last episode when they were with the big fight because they were all working together, and it was the first time it felt more like the later episodes and scenes of Adventure, and that they were established as a group and they're all working together. So I like that aspect of it. And I feel like we haven't seen that in the new Adventure yet. And so this is really the first time we saw it, so that's why I really enjoyed it.
So what was your favorite, what's been your favorite episode of Adventure 2020?
I think it would probably be 2 episodes ago, before this one, when
The one with Aizman?
yes, when Icemon turned evolved at the end. Because I like that it was a new story and something completely different than the episodes we were getting previously, and it was not just about someone getting a new evolution or an old evolution. And so I like that we really didn't know what we were getting going into it, and we had a new villain, a new Digimon, and then we had everyone showing up at the end, even if there's a few plot holes in how they all got to the same spot.
I think plot hole's not really fair because plot hole's like if there's a direct contradiction in logic. But I think with that they haven't bothered to explain what happened. So it's like it's not like it directly contradicts anything. It's just there's a gap in what's been explained.
And that's basically what we're referring to is how all the other group, Matt's group, showed up in the fake Tokyo when they were supposed to meet up at a
Wow.
different spot.
I mean, you could call it Sora's group, but you know,
Until I see a Bergermon evolution sequence, it
very,
won't be Matt's group.
wow, what such a man. Wow.
This is Agumon and Gabumon's world, and we're just living in it.
Okay, let's dive into this week's episode. Episode 18, Countdown to Tokyo's Annihilation, aka Our Worst Game, aka Omegamons of a Feather. Spoiler policy, like always, we're going to be talking about everything that was in the Crunchyroll episode, including the title and preview for next week, but not including the text, any text synopses or titles for things that have been released beyond next week's episode. Yeah, so Erik, quick impressions about this episode?
It was a very long episode for not a lot happening. It felt like it went on for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, this is just for like background recording. Like the release schedule for these Adventure 2020 episodes has been very inconsistent. Like episodes that come out I've gotten podcast episodes out on like Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday, on Thursday, on Friday. Hopefully, this one's going to be out on Friday. But they've always been recorded on Sunday morning, and it's just taken me longer or shorter to edit. This is the first time we're actually recording way late in the week, and so uh, yeah, this episode has not like grown favorably in my mind since then. It's just been that was. I don't want to say it was a chore to watch, but it just like because it wasn't that bad. It wasn't like this is actively unfun to watch. It was just very disappointing.
It sort of felt like we were in a very exciting arc, and then in the middle of the arc, we got a big old filler episode. Because they were on a very good trajectory with the team getting together, then they're defeating their first like ultimate as a group, and then we just have to watch the Agumon Gabumon show.
Yeah, I think so this episode is like a failure on so many different levels, and I think there are some things that I think are totally well, it sounds kind of mean to say, but like fairly inexcusable, like the writing and the structure of pivoting from the focus on everyone to the focus on just Taichi and Yamato. But I think well, okay, wait. So like I think there are three I wrote this down as my three pillars of frustration with this episode. First off, that it's just Taichi and Yamato and the other kids just sitting around. Second of all, that it's a rehash of episodes 2 and 3 of the show, which were already kind of a rehash of a war game, so it feels extremely repetitive. And the horrible pacing slash lackluster animation. But I think those first two things are like I think if it didn't have the horrible pacing and lackluster animation, those other two things would be more excusable. I think we would have put up with them if this had been a huge spectacle. And I don't know. We're just reading into the tea leaves here, but like I think this really was an episode that had to be cut to fit things into the new schedule for COVID. Like because this feels like an episode that would have been satisfying if it had been. I feel like it was supposed to be a spectacle. I feel like they were building up these moments to be big spectacle moments, and they just weren't spectacle moments. They were just bland moments, and so it's just like then those other pillars of frustration reveal themselves. But I think if it had been a really great spectacle, it would have been like, this episode was great, but these other things are a little frustrating. Instead, we're just like the whole thing was frustrating.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the episodes we've dealt with issues of animation or lack of evolutions, and while there was story there that made up for it, or other things that made up for it, and so like you said, it's just without any of those there, it was like why was this the end product you decided to put out?
Yeah, I think there's like nothing else to make up for the bad animation or whatever this episode. And it also like such bad animation for what's supposed to be such a hype moment is just like nothing about this has sold this as being that big of a moment. Like even Nidhogman is like in some scenes, in some shots, looks really cool and intimidating, and other ones is just like barely moving or like I don't know, like it's just like it doesn't really sell the threat when it's like you can't animate the terror.
Yeah, I think I will have nightmares though about the image of its tongue that has all those like holes on it that shoot out lasers. That was a little disturbing.
Yeah. All right. So let's dive into the recap. We start off. There's no Digimon Encyclopedia. We'll get to that later. But in the recap, we see Takeru and Akari watching the countdown, and then it kind of transitions directly into the episode, which is kind of a neat touch. Koshiro notices that the powers are turning, but that the countdown is showing in Tokyo too. And then Orochimon's head reforms and absorbs energy from Tokyo. People drop their phones. Nidagman appears. Being a couple days removed from these events, from watching the episode the second time, I'm like, oh, it's all just matter of fact. Yeah, I guess these things happen. Like I've kind of forgotten my emotional reaction to individual scenes.
Yeah, I feel like the episode before kind of ended on this cliffhanger of the countdown. And so I think the lack of like the encyclopedia kind of is warranted because like we're just going straight into the danger or the drama of what was happening. Like there's no time to hear about the cushion that the kids ride whenever they're riding on their Digimon into battle and somehow not flying off.
Yeah, it's magnetic cushion. Yeah, I mean, I agree that the thing that makes me really curious about the encyclopedia positioning is like, is this a permanent change? They're always going to be at the end now because that is I think how they've done it in the past. I think for both Cross Wars and Atmon, these similar segments were at the end of the episode. And so part of me is like, oh, that's much more natural for the end of the episode, and they made a good permanent decision. Or was this just a single thing to do this episode because it was, like you're saying, they wanted to, like there was such a dramatic teaser, they had to lead directly into it. And I don't know.
I think they'll switch. I think they'll switch back to how they've been doing it in the very beginning, right after, or just at the very beginning. I think I seriously think just the whole entire all the events have just been leading up to this of solving the energy crisis, and so I think they really just wanted to turn the lights back on quickly.
I mean, I'm really divided about which of the two I like better because I think having the end feels more natural, maybe because I'm used to the Cross Wars and Atmon ones, but I kind of like it better at the beginning. I feel like it sets the tone, that makes it like a fun like intro, and I think it does add to like a feeling of frustration where it's like, okay, when does the episode actually start? Oh, it's not until like 3 or 4 minutes in. Like it feels kind of exhausting to be like, okay, like where's the actual episode? But I don't know. I'm extremely torn. Like I don't know which one I would prefer, so we'll just see where it goes.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so after Nidogmon appears, Koshira's laptop says the data is unreadable, but then thankfully, I guess, as soon as Koshira's laptop can't read any of his data, he announces himself as Nidogmon, and I thought the execution here was like really awkward because it's like, I am Nidhogmon, a mega who exceeds the ultimate level, and it's like I know that you only know about ultimate levels, but I am above. It's like, okay, great. Like you're bragging about being mega. Like I don't know. It feels weirdly out of place for a world that will probably have plenty of megas soon. Maybe that's not fair. Maybe they'll always treat megas as this rare exception that like I don't know. It just feels weird. It just feels like he clearly thought they did not know what megas were, and it's like, yeah, we don't. But why are you announcing yourself this way? I thought it very awkward.
I mean, I think it would be funny if every mega that we encounter from now on announces is just pompous and announces themselves. Like, I'm a mega, I'm better
You
than you.
you've probably never even heard of Omega. It's like we have Omegamon. He's like kind of higher than Omega. Like, yeah, maybe. And yeah, I don't know. The moment of Nidagmon talking was hyped up a little bit because he's voiced by Volcana Ota, who is like I don't even know how to describe him, like a personality. He's voiced random voices in Digimon for decades, and he kind of like was hyping up on social media he was going to be in this episode. But I think his last appearance was Andromon, and so I was like, oh, he's probably going to be another character that speaks a single line, and that's why they didn't get a famous voice actor or whatever to do a full role because it's going to be a single line. So as soon as Nidamon talked in the scene, I was like, this is probably going to be his only line, and it was, and that's the amount of characterization we get for the villains in the show, I guess. All right, so after Nidakmon announces himself, Feather falls. Takaru starts seeing everyone else through his phone screen. Oh God, I reading Palmon in my notes. I just can't help. I just see it as Paimon from Genshin Impact now. So, oh God, that I'm sure will be a topic we bring up later. I'm assuming. So I won't mention that now. Palmon comments that she's hot, and Koshiro explains that Narmon is absorbing energy and getting hotter.
Okay, I read that entire statement as Paimon now. It's like, when did Paimon say she's hot?
Oh God. Speaking of things getting hot, my laptop is spinning up for some reason. Oh, I guess because I went and bought a case closed DVD on Amazon. But it's getting very
Mystery
hot.
solved. One truth will
Oh
prevail.
God. So if you hear awkward fan noise in the background, that's why. It's because of Nidhogmon making everything hotter. And Koshiro concludes that Nidhogmon will release the energy once the countdown reaches 0 and annihilate Tokyo. I thought this was a until Kosher made this conclusion, I was like, oh, so Nunagomon's getting hotter as the countdown gets lower. Maybe this is just like a download count. Like it's like he's uploading the energy to himself. And it's just like the countdown is just once you reach 0, he'll be done absorbing energy. So I was like, oh, maybe it's not, it's clearly nefarious, but it's not like there's going to be some explosion once it hits 0. And then instead, Kosher was like, no, there's definitely going to be an explosion once it hits 0. And I was like, okay, sure, Koshiro.
Yeah, I didn't really draw the connection to it reaching 0. And I mean, I know he said it, but I didn't like understand how he reached that conclusion because he draws all this energy and then he's going to release it back through the data portal. I feel like if anything, he would release it in the fake Tokyo where they're at and like destroy the digital world, which wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah. I think there's a problem the show has with writing Koshiro exposition dumps where like they need to have him deliver a conclusion, but the like writing of the logic for him to get to that conclusion, I feel like it's happened multiple times recently where it's like, I don't see the logic that his character had in universe, but I guess this is more of a vehicle for the writers to tell us what we're supposed to think. So I guess I'm not supposed to actually think about the logic, but okay. Yeah, so Taichi and Yamato stand up, and everyone the other characters stay seated for the whole episode, basically, and Taichi and Yamato walk their Digimon down the this is a pretty iconic street in Shibuya, Omotesando, that they're walking along because it has like the trees lining the center of the street and the sides and stuff. I don't know. This seems just very. I feel like what they're going for in the scene is that Taichi and Yamato are like, they and the Digimon are so exhausted they need to support each other to keep walking, and that's supposed to be like really endearing that they're going towards this threat despite barely being able to move. But with the lackluster execution, it was just like, okay, they're just kind of going, okay. It doesn't really make sense, and it is a bad idea, but I guess they're gonna do it anyway.
Yeah, and they're having trouble walking, and everyone is visibly tired. But because we have an in-universe countdown, in like 1 minute they're suddenly running and they're at full strength, and I just don't understand how they can go from dead tired to we're ready to fight, but yet if they're able to recover that quickly, what about the four other kids sitting there? Like, why can't their Digimon like evolve or digivolve and help out? Like, it's like, oh, we'll let the main characters take care of this.
I mean, I just feel like it's a matter of execution because I feel like if you like that description of like they start off barely being able to walk, they have to support each other to walk, and then end up at a point where they can sprint and they can run and they can fight full strength. Like that's something that you could be, and just through their own determination, through their own like will to fight and their need to save everyone. That's something that like on paper can totally work. It just needs to be delivered in a way that makes you feel emotions enough for you to like not think about the logic that you're describing of like how are they able to get over that in the span of a minute. Like it needs to make you feel stuff. And this episode's animation and execution and directing and everything did not make us feel anything. But Nidogmon fired lasers at them, and this is the one moment where I was like, I feel like every other repeatedly in this show, enemy Digimon fire lasers at them or something, and it misses them, and it's like not really a plot point. It's like, oh no, they got hit. Oh no, they're still okay. But this time it's like, okay, the lasers go past them, and like the impact of it isn't that the kids got attacked, it's that the buildings in IRL Tokyo start shattering from the lasers that the Dogmon fired in fake Tokyo, which was kind of a cool. It's like, okay, there was a point to them missing this time. But Hikari and Takaru start watching phones emitting blue particles. The Another moment of weird execution where the B crew on the ground, the other kids, the four kids who are stuck on the ground, watch red and blue lights jump up and hit Nidogmon, and then we cut back to Taichi and Yamato on the ground, and I'm like, I guess they're jumping back in time to explain what those blue and red lights were that jumped up, I guess.
Oh no, those were Agumon and Gabumon's fire
Oh,
attacks.
they're projectile attacks.
Yeah, because when they cut back to Gabumon, he still has like the residue blue flame in his mouth.
Mm. Well, okay, so they cut back to them and they just resolve to save everyone real hard, and then they get the energy to evolve to Greymon and Garurumon, and they climb Nidogmon, get blown back, and Takeru and Akari put their hands out for the feather that's falling. And I just want to take this moment to say that, like, if you are a holy, presumably these feathers are being sent by some holy Digimon or something to like help out in this instance where like great, of great importance, they need to intervene. And if there's a countdown, don't deliver your power through a feather that like just dangles in the air for 10 minutes until like, send
I
like a
think I
holy
think
arrow.
I think Jedi is just has one like dove and is in a helicopter in the real world, and he has to drop that one feather, and it takes a while to get for the feather to drop from those high altitudes. So I don't see a problem with this at all.
I just realized, so you said Jedi, right?
Yes,
I heard Jedi, and I just realized how similar those words sound
I mean he's
because he does
Jedi
look like a
is
Jedi.
dressed, yeah, and he also has to shine a light like a flashlight from the helicopter, so the feathers glow.
Oh boy, now she's writing fan fiction. Yeah, so so they reach out. Takeru and Hikaru reach out for the feathers. Their crests glow, and Takeru kind of like,
Takaru,
okay, now you're correcting my Japanese pronunciation. You
hi,
happen to be correct.
hi.
Okay, so oh god, now I can start over. So Takeru and Hikari reach out for the feathers. Their crests glow, and Takeru starts to digitize and then is never seen for the rest of the episode. So I guess he went to the digital world. Maybe.
Yeah, I think we will see him in, if not the next episode, in the future episode. I imagine
Yeah.
he's going to be, I mean, we'll talk about it later, but basically the groups will split up and there'll be two groups now. I think the group with the most people will run into them, and that will be the motivation to like have that moment when Matt and TK meet up.
Yeah, so a bubble appears and Omegamon reveals himself, and it's a fantastic dramatic moment that we've all been waiting for and is not disappointing in the slightest. And so Kushra recognizes Omegamon. At this point, there's 1 minute left in the countdown, and I don't want to harp on the. So I took note of the countdown, like when it was decreasing, because for a second I was like, well, the thing I noticed watching it was like this countdown has been jumping all over the place. It feels like there are moments where it was like barely moving, or well, I guess towards the end here, like when action starts happening, it feels like it's barely moving. But then early in the episode, it's like there's been like 10 seconds of on-screen time, and then it's gone down 2 minutes. Is what it felt like. So I did take note of like whenever the countdown was shown, how much time, if it had been going at real time or whatever, and definitely it starts off going very fast, like it's going roughly 1.8 speed, then it's going 1.3, then it's going 1.1, then 2.9. There's a moment where it's like hasn't been it's been like only 10 seconds of on-screen time and it's gone down 30 seconds in countdown. So anyway, I just bring that up to say that like definitely while watching it I was like this countdown is like skipping all over the place, and I think it feels especially bad in the beginning when nothing's happening and yet the countdown keeps jumping significant amounts, and it feels like the kids are still just sitting on the ground.
I mean, that's a
It's
common anime trope. I feel like there are many episodes of like Yu-Gi-Oh where they have X amount of minutes to finish the duel, but they're still, taking their sweet time and drawing their card and extending their arm all the way out, and then like having an inner dialogue the last half the episode.
I mean, but that's fine if that inner dialogue is exciting and fun, but instead it's like if there's and like you're saying, if they're doing a dramatic flourish to extend the time, that's fine. But if it's like, they haven't even gone like you have a 10 minutes to do this duel in Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's 5 minutes left and they still haven't even started turn one. And it's like, okay, we finished turn one. Now there's 1 minute left. And it's like, great, you barely got through the duel.
I mean, that's most Yu-Gi-Oh episodes.
No, they get through more than one turn.
I think they get through 3 turns per episode.
Oh god.
But I think the like shoddy speeds, like it's quick at one point, the countdown's moving quick at one point, slower the other. I think it's easily explainable by the amount of bandwidth that Nick Hogman is hogging up by doing this download from
Oh,
the real world.
so you think it's actually distorting time?
I think, I mean, it's possible. It could be like there could be a lot of buffering needed for that download, and so that countdown's just slowing down. The digital world's CPU just does not have enough power to do the download and run a simple timer.
Oh boy! So you build one PC, and now you're an expert in overclocking, and you're gonna correct Nidogmon on how you should overclock the digital world.
I think they should just get fiber internet, because
Oh
fiber
god!
internet has changed my life. Let's take a moment to talk about fiber internet.
To clarify, like I don't want to give the impression that like oh the countdown speeds are inconsistent, therefore it's bad. Because like no, like in dramatic moments like this, it should be inconsistent. It should match the dramatic tone of the scene that's happening. Like if there's some big dramatic thing happening, it should slow down to reflect that. To like while they're getting the minutia of some like crazy move or something like that. That's totally fair and totally expected. It's that like the fact that there were like long stretches of the episode where like there'd just be a big jump and it's like wait what? But you haven't done anything. Like 3 minutes have passed and you haven't even tried to do anything yet. Like that's really the feeling that I disliked about the timer.
Okay, that's fair.
So at this point, there's 1 minute left in the countdown, and Hikari and some random kids around her see Omegamon through the screen. At this point, it was weird because like adults have dropped their phones and ran away, and now there are just these kids standing around Hikari watching the fight. But then later, once things come back to normal, the adults are back with their phones, and I'm like, did they just not? I guess they wanted this inspirational shot of like other kids watching this fight
Yeah,
to harken back to our war game, but
yeah, with all the kids watching through the computer monitors.
yeah,
That I think they just wanted that scene of all the kids watching.
yeah. But these kids came out of nowhere and then disappeared.
I'm not sure exactly what they're watching though, because in the real world, there's just like the blue particles were just going to one spot, and I guess there was some electricity happening. But I feel like if I was a kid, that would be interesting for a second, and then it would just read danger, and then I would try to get away. Like I don't understand why they're watching.
Well, they were seeing the fight on the screen, weren't they? On the countdown?
Were they?
I think they were.
I didn't know Kari could see it. I thought they couldn't see anything once the phone started overheating.
I think they implied that like Hikari is watching on one of the big monitors through the countdown. She's watching the fight, and other kids are watching, looking in the same direction. So I assumed they were also seeing it
Okay.
at this point.
Also, if these phones are like burning up, I don't know how they stayed on, because when when phone batteries heat up, don't they like drain super quickly because it's outputting energy?
Okay, now we're. I think that's thinking too hard about it.
And that's my main quirk with this episode is the lack of physics.
Yes, let's call up Steve Jobs and get him to explain the battery of these iPhones. He'll come back from beyond the grave to complain.
I think these are androids. If you saw, there was a bunch of data being stolen. So
Anyway, Nidagmon shoots fire, Omegamon defends, shoots it back, blah blah. Like on paper, this fight doesn't sound so bad, but it's just like every bit of Omegamon fighting here is like the most lackluster animation. Is just like there's even a moment where he's like deflecting. And it's like there's like 3 frames of animation. It's just alternating between these 3 frames, and Omegamon deflects with his lasers, and Omegamon deflects the lasers with his sword, and then shoots an ice beam and freezes Negamon. I never really thought about Omegamon as being like it makes sense. Like the cannon from Metal Gurumon shoots ice, like it should freeze things. But something about Omegamon freezing something felt really weird to me. Like I don't remember seeing Omegamon doing that before, and it felt kind of like I think because usually when Omegamon is deployed, it's like dramatic enough that there's not going to be a villain who's just frozen in place for a second.
yeah, I recall them just being like fiery explosions. I don't remember. I mean, I understand why there's a nice element, but I don't recall it being a nice element in the past.
Yeah, it's like it makes sense, but it just feels out of place. And I think because normally it's too dramatic to have this like dull moment of like, oh no, he's frozen. Oh no, he's not frozen. Oh no.
I mean, all the Digimons are getting new attacks, so this could be a Megamon's, Giga Destroyer.
Hmm. I forget now if Giga Destroyer is the new. No, Giga Destroyer is the old one. Giga Blaster is the new one.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. Taichi Yamato scream. Omega Man cuts through the energy beam and then cuts Negamon in half. Great. The countdown stops at 6 seconds left. And for a second, I was like, oh, are they gonna? It'd be nice if they displayed. Anyway, I think it did display whatever is below seconds. I don't know what is technically below seconds in that display, but like I wanted to stop at 666, but then I realized, wait, if it's in increments of 60, that wouldn't actually be a real number. But it would have
Yeah.
been cool for the visual of 666. But
I also want to touch on how Omegamon uses his cape to defend at first, and he does it twice, and it works. And that's a great cape. I'm really interested to know like what material that cape's made of, that it can defend against this entire Tokyo Data attack. But also the third time that he defends, he just crosses his arms. So if you were able to cross your arms in the first place, why did you use the cape before? Or why didn't you use the cape the third time?
he's a drama queen.
Yeah, stunt queen.
So yeah, once the countdown stops, people in Tokyo pick up their phones, lights turn back on. Like not the lights on their phones, like the lights around Tokyo. Things are returning back to normal. Akari's mom finds her, and then Akari grabs the feather and insists that Taichi's okay. And Akari's mom's like, "What? What are you talking about?"
Yeah. Taichi may be okay, but the cat that is in that cat carrot is not okay.
Yeah, like I was glad that she's taking care of the cat, but as someone who stresses while carrying a cat carrier, I was like, oh my gosh, she's just running around with this thing.
Yeah, that carrot, I mean, it was the cat inside of it. I guess we don't know. The cat could have been in the car still.
The cat's definitely in the carrier.
But she was letting that carrier go every which way. She was not keep like thinking of the cat's like sense of gravity or anything.
So Megamon basically just, without any verbal communication, just decides to stab the ground, and that destroys the entire fake Tokyo to reveal a desert. This is a cool, like I like the visual of like, you know, it doesn't make any sense why stabbing the ground would destroy the fake Tokyo, but I like that once fake. Oh my god, I keep saying Fakio instead of fake Tokyo.
Well, let's
I,
call it Fakio.
I like that once Fakio is destroyed, that it's just like, okay, they were in a desert the whole time, and it was this fake Tokyo. There's a layer on top of the desert. That's a cool concept.
If Edamon appears as desert, I'm gonna stop watching this show. I hate Edamon.
Wow. Edamon is a furry icon, and
I just have an image of Edamon like thrusting his pelvis forward, and it's just I don't want to see it. Especially when he's made of Digimetal or Chromosome, whatever we're calling it. Chromozoid? Digizoid?
he's a pelvis wrestly. That's
No,
what he's based on.
not this.
Oh god. So basically, we see an evil larva appear, and the countdown starts resuming, and the countdown hits 0, and the larva eye lights up, and then a rift opens in the sky, and a sandstorm appears out of nowhere and pulls up all the B crew. And oh god, first off, I like the idea that the countdown keeps going, and It doesn't really make any sense why it stops and then keeps going, whatever. But I like the idea that like we thought this was a total victory, but like clearly the villain like still got something in the end. There's still like a sinister thing happening. It's cool pacing, cool setup for whatever's gonna happen later. But the sandstorm pulling up everyone, and then Taichi Yamato staying on Omegamon and just being like, "Well, Omegamon's keeping us safe." Like Omegamon basically shields them, and then it's like,
With the cape.
"Yes, with the cape. Yes, okay, we know your favorite character is the cape, but
What is the point of the countdown then? Because initially we thought it was like how long it takes the data from the real world to be like gathered and then sent back to destroy the real world. But if the download was like stopped, like what was the point of the countdown?
I assume it's something like it was energy being fed into this larva, and once they defeated Nidogman, like the energy source stopped. But then, like a little bit of like when you get a progress bar, it gets to 99.4%, and you're like, crap, it got stuck and it's not moving. But then, like some other random data trickles in, like it absorbs some random heat in the environment and then just finishes the download on its own or something.
I
Is kind of
suppose.
how I'm reading it for now.
Either way, it gave us our newest addition to the Devimon evolution line. We have regular Devimon, we have Marine Devimon, we have Ice Devimon, and now we have Illusionary Sandstorm Devimon.
Yeah, I do like. I like that this is the first time the kids have seen Devimon, so they don't really think anything of the fact that he is Sand Devimon, and is basically just a sandstorm in the form of Devimon.
Illusionary Sandstorm Devimon.
I'm just going with Sand Devimon.
I see that you wrote Sand Devimon in the outline. And I had to get my take in there before because that was my joke that I've been holding on to for a week.
That was the joke.
Yes, I was very excited for this because there's
Okay.
so many Devimon forms for some reason. Devimon is another one.
Demi Devimon. I heard you say Devi Devimon. Devi Demimon.
Illusionary Sandstorm Devimon. Buy the toys now.
Jumping back to what we were talking about before, I just find it the like seeing Taichi Yamato be like, "Oh well, Megamon's keeping us safe," while all their friends get pulled up by the sandstorm. It felt so wrong to me. Like that's something that like in real life I think would be totally standard for you to do. Like keep yourself safe and don't jump into danger just to save other people. But like in a shonen like action series like this, what the kids was been normalized, like what is like decades of watching shows like this have taught us to expect is that like Taichi Yamato should be like, oh no, our friends in danger, let's jump in to help them. And instead they're like, well, we're cool. Omega's keeping us safe, so
I
good
mean,
luck.
if this show has taught us anything, it's if your Digimon does not get an evolution sequence, then you're not important.
Yeah, they were just like, you're not main characters for this episode, so bye.
Well, I mean, they just sat there the entire fight. If they
Yeah,
really tried, they could have digivolved again.
we don't need to bring everything back to try. Come on. So, San Devimon announces that the human world is our feed. The fabricated city may have turned to ashes, but this connection is an inalterable feat. And we'll see how this plays out. But I like the idea. It's obvious in retrospect that it's like framing instead of like the Digimon wanting to like we're gonna come and conquer the real world, treating instead the real world like it's not their plaything, but it's their like it's their
Food source.
source. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's their resource. They want to pull from it and stuff, and it's like that makes a lot of sense. It still has the inherent villainy and threat of them damaging the real world without it seeming so mega maniacal, like always that like why okay, Myotismon's a great villain, sure. But like why does he want to conquer both worlds? Like,
It was his destiny. It's a prophecy.
okay. um so I appreciate that it's like no, we want to use it for its resources. We don't necessarily need to conquer it, but we're just gonna like strip it of its parts is a cool reframing. Yeah, and what's not cool is when Agumon and Gabumon attack and the sand fades away, and then Yamato's like, "We'll meet again when we reach our goal." And it's like, "What are you talking about, Yamato? How do you know that?" Like, there's no way Yamato would assume that he's going to like assume that like, "Oh, we won't see you again until you reach our goal." It's like either Yamato is just wrong here, or he is the voice of the writers who are telling us that they're not going to meet until they reach their goal.
I mean, I think he knows that there's a connection between like the holy Digimon that they're after and
Right,
these
right. I
evil
think
people. So I think he knows like this person obviously is, if not the head person, they are in the chain of command. So obviously we're going to come across them again.
Right. No, I think obviously they're going to come across him again, and I think it's even fair for them to conclude at this point that he's the big bad. But to conclude, like we'll see you again when we reach our goal, feels like it's not. Maybe it's just the phrasing of it that bothers me because it felt to me like him kind of guarantee like we won't see you again until we reach our goal.
You got to tune in for the next episodes. You got to keep going until the arc ends.
I
You
mean, it
just
just
gotta
feels
keep
like
tuning in.
so. Like, remember, like in the Dark Master saga, right? Like they're climbing Spiral Mountain or whatever.
Yeah.
They meet the four Dark Masters at the beginning of that arc. It feels like this line feels like if at the end of that encounter they were like, Piedmon, Puppetmon, Metal Siegramon. Did I say all of them? Pinocchio, Puppetmon? Anyway, all four of them. If they said to them, like, we'll meet you again once we reach the top of Spiral Mountain, it's like, no, they're going to meet most of them along the way. Like, why would you assume that you're not going to see them again until they reach the top? So that's just what it felt like to me. It's like, why is he assuming he's not going to meet Devimon until they reach their goal?
Wasn't the Dark Masters like headquarters at the top of the mountain though?
Well, it was. And like, Piedmon, they didn't meet until they got to the top. But like,
Brightman was smart. He let them like wear themselves out.
yeah, well, he was lazy.
Well, he did not count for the glass cannon that is Magnanimon.
Anyway, we see the episode ends with Devimon in an ominous tower, and that's the end of the episode. So I think we'll get into more of our thoughts about the episode once we get to listener questions. Let's do through reviews. At Golden Pelt said Omegamon still unearned.
At Creel Prime said, Deusmon X Omegamon.
At Bored Individual, episode 3 rehash.
At Dak and Jackster said, perfunctory, unneeded rematch.
1 Foot Stout, next level bad.
Andy Lucas TT said, Hikari Dickory Clock.
At Grim Catician, please work together.
At Gigadramon22 said,
You're really milking this size, aren't you?
yes, I am. And for those listening, they said, whoever reads this, just cite 3 times for me. Unsure how to write that down on Twitter.
At CRM McRae, Wargame again.
At Jahi Johnson said, the disappearing budget.
At Megadramon22, Omnimon not special.
At Leo Sketch said, underwhelming, undeserved, unsatisfied.
At Empire Will, not much happened.
At Enurin Nat said, I give up, face with a mount emoji, cold sweat.
At Austin LT23, Megamon again, and then nausea to face, unamused face.
At Faku AF said, very limited animation.
At Steve Bow, Omegamon again, thumbs down.
At DigiX Mon said, Tayama Adventure 2020.
At Actor Rykit, Omegamon Ex Machina.
At Yurzim Rablek said, please vanish Omegamon.
At Lover_Digimon, Omegamon again, boring. Yeah. On that note, let's transition to listener questions. The first one came in from Karito Prime, and he asked, how, why, when, and who. I agree. Yeah.
What about where?
What about whomst? Next comment from Andy Lucas TT. First, starting off with a positive comment. Nidhoggmon was a great design, very creepy with all his eyes, and the orange/red versus black was a great color choice for him. Good choice of name since in Norse mythology, I don't know how to pronounce the actual like writing of Nidhogg in with all the I don't even know what you call these things. There's diacritics and other symbols on letters that I don't recognize from the languages I've studied. So I've only studied Latin and Japanese. Anyway, however you're supposed to pronounce Nidhogg. In Norse mythology, Nidhogg eats at the foot of the world tree, same as he did in Tokyo. Gotta praise the dragon. So moving on from Andy Lucas TT's positive comment to his question, power scaling in this series is seriously out of whack. Mega Digimon of the Week, but the overarching enemy is champion level? Feels like the Avengers just beating Thanos, then being threatened by Tim from Starbucks and his hot coffee. Your thoughts? I think to really see, I think it's putting the cart before the horse to already be disappointed by Devimon as a villain, because I really think we need to see how that plays out once they actually encounter him. I don't have a clear vision of how they're going to make Devimon feel like a satisfying threat now that they've dealt with Mega Digimon. But I think it's such an obvious question. I don't think they would be doing this scenario if they didn't have an answer for it. Even as much as this episode has like shattered my faith in the series to some degree, it hasn't, like shattered it that much. It's like still feels like you would never set it up this way if you didn't have a very clear vision for how to make Devimon threatening once they encounter him, or at least satisfying. Because they could encounter him, and it could be more of like a Wizard of Oz, like man behind the curtain kind of thing, where they defeat Devimon really easily, and then there's actually a bigger bad. And maybe that's what they're setting up now with this larva thing.
Yeah, I don't think Devimon. So with the ending shot when Devimon does that cute little smirk, and then the camera like pans backwards or pans out. So to me, it seemed like Devimon was actually surrounded by the dark plasma, whatever we're calling it. Mm-hmm. And so my thought is actually that because we still don't know what the source of this thing is, so Devimon can actually be controlled by someone else and then Devamon is like acting out and controlling all these other Digimon. So it could be someone in the shadows still who is beyond champion.
Even despite that, like, it'll feel unsatisfying if they get to Devimon and then just squash him in a second, and it's like he wasn't this big bad. I mean, if I had to take a guess, what they're going for is that like by the time they get to Devimon, whatever this larva thing that he's hatching will be the threat that matches them at Mega Level or whatever. But I still need to see how that plays out with actually dealing with Devimon, because like I mean, actually, if I had to guess, it's probably going to be this larva is going to hatch into this big bad Mega Level Digimon or whatever, and then it
Myosmon.
eats Devimon, like how Myodasmon ate Demi-Devimon.
Right.
So I think it's I don't know. I think it's plausible for Devimon to be controlling things behind the scenes and be kind of like a remote force that I don't feel like it's that
I mean,
out of
did
place.
you see like the environment when the camera
Yeah, it
panned
was in
back?
like the miasma, like a tower in the miasma.
Yeah.
I don't doesn't really make sense to me that I don't like your I don't not I don't like I don't personally buy your theory that he is being controlled unless they're going down the route of him being controlled, him being a corrupted version of Angemon, and once he's purified, he becomes Angemon. That would be really cool.
Oh, that could be the Holy Digimon that was stolen.
Yeah, like if Devimon actually is the Holy Digimon, that would be awesome. But I doubt they're going that route. Next question from Dak and Jackster. As a whole, Adventure has been a bit dry and stoic, IMO. I feel like it would benefit a lot from a Try/Kisuna style dub where it had some fun with the dialogue and added some gags without going too over the top. What are your thoughts? This, I I am so glad I'm not personally involved in making these calls and making these decisions about choosing whether to go with a like a faithful kind of localization or a over the top interpretation, because you know I appreciate the original dub's like sense of humor and fun antics it adds on top of the show. But I don't know, that's from a different era. I think it makes sense for things like Try and Kizuna to uphold that because the target audience is kids who were familiar with the original. Since this show is so mixed and muddled about like it's unsure whether it's really we are unsure whether it's really for the returning audience of adults or whether it's for new kids. I don't know. I don't know. I think if they were mainly targeting the returning audience, then maybe it would make sense to go with a fun punch it up kind of style dub. But like I don't know. In this past week, it was the 20th anniversary of the release of Digimon the movie, and some people around the internet have been celebrating it a bit. So there's been a bunch of discourse about the movie and like whether people like that style or not, or whether it's like even if it's fun, is it still kind of disrespectful to the original movie and stuff? Original three movies. I think one of the most interesting things is I'll link in the show notes to this blog post that Jeff Nimoy, the dub director of most of season one and season two, and also the director of the movie, he wrote this blog post basically like telling a bunch of behind the scenes stories about the production of the movie, and it's really interesting. Lots of interesting tidbits there. But I think the most insightful thing from that blog post is just seeing the creative process that they went through deciding to stitch together three movies into one movie, and how that was very much not his he did not want to do that. He wanted to be like the first two movies and not have the third one because it's so tonally and stylistically different. But it's interesting hearing like, okay, they were assigned like I had to do three movies, and then basically the approach was like, okay, how can we make the third movie salvageable? How can we cut it up and make it fit? And it's like so I feel like that attitude doesn't really fly these days because of the proliferation of things like Crunchyroll and Funimation with people watching in Japanese with subtitles. I feel like it's just like that general attitude of like let's try and change it as much as possible to make it more appealable is just like I don't know. I feel like the market these days is instead to make it more as close to the original as possible, and if it fails or succeed, it's by the original show's merits and not based on how much you change in localization. I don't know. Those are just my vague thoughts. So
I mean, aren't the weird like dialogue and gags that were in the original dub? Isn't that part of the reason why people like it? Isn't that part of the
yeah,
reason why people are so nostalgic about it?
I don't
So I feel like if
know.
they're going for some newer audience to like join the fandom, why not give them the thing that was the deciding factor for people in the original?
Well, I don't know if people like because I don't remember as a kid appreciating those jokes. You know, like I think as a kid I even found them kind of maybe not cringeworthy, but like embarrassing.
Well, why do you get the pepperoni and I get the crust?
That's not the saying.
What is this saying?
I think it's why do you get the pizza and I get the crust?
But the crust is still part of the pizza.
We should call up Bakuman and ask him for his rendition of it. Um, But no, yeah, I think it's something that we appreciate as adults looking back on it and being like, wow, it had all this extra texture. But I think as kids, like I definitely was like, I was embarrassed by liking Digimon. Like I didn't want to tell people about it. My parents made fun of me a little bit for it and stuff. So like, I definitely felt like it was like embarrassing to watch. And things I liked it for were not the funny jokes. And I think as I've matured more, I can go back and appreciate those funny jokes and not viewing it from this angle of like, am I cool for watching the show or not? So I don't know. I think it could succeed without that, but also the show has been so bland in terms of characterization. Like I was talking about last week with Cinderella, like it doesn't really have a character or like a voice to the whole series because it's just been like there have been a couple jokes sprinkled here or there, but like as of this episode, like when was the last joke or like funny moment we had? In the Eisman episode, the
It's
burger
been
stuff.
pretty serious. Yeah, the burger. I mean, it's been pretty serious with like them fighting an actual enemy and possibly dying.
Oh, I guess actually there was the that's a good transition to on the note of like funny comedy in the episodes. I forgot that like last week there was kind of that little joke about Joe, like when they're falling, like when Mimi comments on them falling, and Joe was like, "But my test score, I don't want my test scores to be falling," and I was like, "This feels like a dub joke. It feels really out of place and feels like something that doesn't really match the tone of what's going on." We got a really good comment from Cherry Grove in our comment section, and they clarified that apparently it's actually a widespread superstition in Japan that falling or slipping and even talking about falling or slipping is correlated with your test scores falling. So it's more like it's not. So with that superstition in mind, and I'll have a link to this article that they linked to, which talks about these like common Japanese superstitions. I think it's a definitely adds a lot of context to that scene and makes a lot more sense. And they also in the comment mentioned that it clarifies an earlier scene in episode 7 when that's the one where like Joe falls off of Kakumon at the end, and it's like that's kind of like I think the undertone there that it's like it's not just him slipping, it's his desk was slipping too. So that's a cool little clarification. It makes a lot more sense of that scene. But to the original discussion point about the dub style of dubs, I don't know. I am definitely of two minds.
At this point, what could it hurt?
Yeah, I guess so. Like,
If Nick Hogman was telling jokes, this episode could have been saved.
I don't know. I feel like
If Illusionary Sandstorm Devimon came in and said, "What about the airline food? Am I right?" As their opening line, this episode would have been 5 stars for me.
I guess I feel like I don't know. I appreciate the dub that we got for Digimon, but like I don't know. I generally prefer things to like stick to, let them succeed or fail based on the original show's merits and not try to change too much. And I don't know, but I mean Digimon is harkening back to this old legacy, so it would be totally in place for them. It wouldn't be out of place for them to continue that legacy. I don't know. It's I sympathize with people who both hate the dub and sympathize with people who love the dub, and I don't know which way I should go. I think the only thing that's like for sure is that like replacing the original score with worse music is always a travesty. But also like the score of this show has been pretty good, but it hasn't been like the best thing ever. So wouldn't be like
Yeah.
the worst thing, but I think it's been fairly good. Yeah. So anyway, next question from CRR McRae. Seriously, is there something wrong with the animators and writers? If it's a COVID thing, they should just postpone the whole series. So about postponing the whole series, like I understand the philosophy. Like we are focused on Digimon as an art form. Like we want the best Digimon product to come out, but for like for an animation company as a capitalistic enterprise, like there are so many other things that come up if they delay things more than necessary, and like things are already in such chaos. I'm sure from delaying the months they had to that like I think the number one prerogative in that time is to get it back on schedule as much as possible because they, like, I don't know how many years out they have planned generally, but like when you have years out planned of like different shows you're going to be airing, you can't just easily slip Digimon and just push into those other production schedules. Like the longer you slip, the more it's going to be upheaving other productions, and like Digimon isn't their most profitable thing right now, so it's like understandable that it kind of not takes a backseat, but like you kind of just have to get it out there. And
I mean, these
but
people also need like jobs and something to do. And I feel like if you have a lot of people, at least for the American audience, where the country still hasn't gotten their shit together, where they're stuck at home, I feel like releasing it in a time period where people are going to be home, as opposed to after where people are not going to want to spend time at home to watch a series. And I feel like it's a good time to capitalize on it to get people to see it.
mm, I guess I don't know if that. Yeah, I guess in Japan, I don't think there's been quite the I don't. There haven't been like the huge waves of unemployment in Japan like we've seen here. So but yeah, I think, and in terms of like, to me, the bigger question isn't like, should the whole show have been delayed more to make a better product? I think the big question is like, why is this the episode that has seems to be hit by COVID the worst? And I think it feels very counterintuitive because it's like, if this is feels like is kind of a climactic moment for the series, why is it the one that was treated the worst? And like, isn't this the moment that should really get the most attention and not the least? And that's kind of my guess is that's why. My guess is that in the budgeting for the series and in the like production planning of the series, that this was initially planned as being a very ambitious episode, and that in consolidating a new production schedule post COVID, that this is all hypothetical, but I'm guessing they could have either cut out and gutted several episodes or gutted this one big huge episode. And that's my guess, that like that they probably saw that like, okay, if we have one terrible episode, people might get over it, but if we have several bad episodes in a row, then people will lose interest in the series. So that's kind of my optimistic take on it, that like, you have one bad episode, it's not too bad.
They can't all be good.
Yeah, but I'm just reading the tea leaves and guessing there, but that's kind of where I feel like with things. Okay, so next question/comment came from Grimcatician, and they said, Omegamon is the new Angemon line. That's fine. I'm praying that now that the time limit is up, we'll actually get some character interactions. I'm starved. I've just been glad for the breadcrumbs last episode, which is pretty sad. Especially frustrated by our leads. Taichi is a boring Taiki from Fusion/Cross Wars. What do we know about him at this point? What do we know about any of the characters besides very surface level stuff? And we're one third of the way through the show. Knowing what Digimon can do with characters, even in series like Crosswords and Frontier, this is just frustrating. I'm seriously at the point where I'm mostly thinking about the ways I'll be disappointed as opposed to feeling excited, but still a little weary. I don't like this feeling. I feel like I'm still waiting for something to happen. I'm still waiting for episode 3, but we're long past that. Yeah, I recognize, I agree with a lot of that sentiment and think that I'm not optimistic that things are going to change just because the countdown's gone, but I'm hopeful that like if we shake up the status quo enough that we could get more insight of these characters. And I don't know, but I'm not expecting much now. I feel like the tone has been set. This is an action focused series and not a character focused series.
Yeah, this kind of goes back to when I was talking about my impression so far of the new adventure, in that if you come into the series with all the knowledge of the characters, then the series kind of works because you know what the characters are all like. But if you go into it as like fresh eyes and you're expecting them to build the characters up from the ground up, then it's kind of a little disappointing because there's those character developments just not there at all. But if you
Yeah.
think about it as like this is just another adventure for Taichi, like while they're in the digital world, then it kind of works because you know all the background stuff already. But if we're not seeing that on screen, then it's kind of awkward.
Yeah, I mean, that reminds me, I have 2 points of comparison. The first of which is, so we watched the first episode. So for my other podcast, Love It a Wee Bit, on that show, I recently recorded an episode about the latest season of Precure, which is a magical girl transformation anime from Toei Animation, same studio as Digimon, and it's a show that I think because Toei has been a lot more successful in making that show profitable, seems to get a lot more investment. It basically, in a lot of ways, feels like what Digimon would have been if Digimon had been successful. Like it's following a similar formula of early seasons of Digimon, where there's a new season every year, and almost every season is a complete reset of the cast and the setting and everything, and new gimmicks each season, new toys each season. Like it feels very much like the Digimon formula applied to Magical Girl anime, and actually been successful enough to have run for I think 17 years consistently, with like, and it's applying the old Digimon formula of like 2 movies each year, and they've even won up like the way the Cross Wars had the crossover episode at the end. Apparently, Pretty Cure has each year has a crossover film with all the characters of the show so far. And anyway, it seems like it's a
Jeez.
massively successful franchise that like is huge in Japan, is like one of the biggest things ever. And in just watching the first 3 episodes of this new show, it's like it reminds me what Digimon could be back in its heyday, back when it wasn't kind of there just for nostalgia, which is what a lot of the recent projects have felt like. Like in 3 episodes, it's not the most. I think this latest season of Precure is not the most interesting, but in those 3 episodes, we like there's character development. We like learn more about characters. I don't know. I think Atmon in recent years feels the most like that, and like old school Digimon in terms of adding characterization. So I'm excited to rewatch Atmon and relive that. But that is I don't know. It's yeah, just the point of like it feels we know Digimon can do better. We know that Toei can do better and does do better in different franchises. And so in different franchises that are very similar in terms of like their structure, their formula.
And I think we're going to get some more character interactions going forward because I mean, they can't give them, unless they're going to give them Mega, everyone a Mega now. They can't give them like new evolution episodes, so they have to like these characters have to interact with each other.
Yeah, I think we're definitely gonna get more character interactions. I think that's for sure. Like, I think we're gonna see them in different combinations and everything. I just don't know if we're actually gonna get significant character development from those interactions. Like, I think that the quality of character development in this show might be just like that. Like mostly non-existent, mostly action focused, and then when it is there, it's gonna be on the level of the Rich One episode where the kids just talk about how much they've grown when we haven't actually seen them grow much. And it just feels like they're kind of saying things that aren't really true just to tell you that they've grown. And it's like, that's the growth. They said they grew. But the other point of comparison I want to make is another thing that's happened since the last episode is, maybe not last episode. Anyway, it's happened recently. Is the movie Last Evolution Kisuna finally came out in English, and we watched it, and I thought it was fantastic. We both really liked it, right?
Yes, I really like that.
And I thought it was in general, it was a really good way to like have a nostalgic film while it retreaded a little bit some of the plot points of Try in a way that I find a little bit dissatisfying. But I think largely it was a very emotionally resonant and just a very good movie. But the thing that it reminds, and this is kind of a spoiler for a plot point in the movie, so skip ahead a minute or two if you have not seen the movie yet and are trying to avoid all spoilers. But the moment when we the build up of the movie that the villain is storing everyone basically in amber, like digitizing them stuck in their childhood forever, and especially because we see like it's like the kids as adult or in college age, and then they get digitized and then they're stuck as kids forever. That's what this show feels like. That's what Adventure 2020 feels like. It feels like the kids stuck in amber version of themselves. They don't have character development. We don't see them grow. We don't see them changing. It feels like we're getting a glimpse into that crystal world from Last Evolution, where the kids are just there. It's like a reinterpretation of them, but they're just stuck there. They don't change or grow or move.
I mean, so you don't think like the children are having fun in their adventure because in the movie, like they're miserable.
Okay, I guess it's not that direct because I do think they're having fun, but it just I don't know. It was surprising to watch that movie and be like, oh god, this is like a perfect metaphor for what the show is doing. Like even conceptually, like yeah, the whole point of it, like it just reminded me how the original adventure franchise was kind of all about like seeing the kids grow. It's seeing Taichi and Yamato at different stages in their age. And we're still early in this reboot. We're still early in this timeline. So maybe it's not fair to compare it to that, but it's like it feels like inevitably we're gonna look back at this and look at it as a single data point as opposed to the original timeline, which was like more of like seeing them grow over the decades. I don't know.
I think your like desire to see these characters grow because like we grew up with them, and so you want to see them like move forward. It's kind of like okay, but let's move back all the way back to the beginning, and it's with them like having to go through the ultimates, and it's kind of like okay, we're just waiting and waiting. So I think that's where part of that feeling is probably from. But I think now that it's at a point where it's taking on new stuff and it's, I'm assuming, about to go in a new direction that was not in the original, I think it's gonna feel a little better and not them just trying to keep these kids like trapped in the form they were from the original.
Yeah, and I don't think like I don't need them to repeat the same emotional beats or like for them to like I guess I shouldn't be focused so much on character growth because I don't really care that much about growth. But it's just like character development in general. Like we don't the early adventure episodes fleshed out the characters in a lot of ways. Like we saw Koshiro, we saw Izzy's like, anxiety about his parents and his adoption status and stuff. And I feel like we just saw a bunch of different anxieties and stuff, and these characters just don't have those flaws or worries or concerns or depth. It's just the characters don't feel as deep, and I don't know that. I think, like you said before, it's like it all works when we are reading that depth onto them because we know the original cast. So it's kind of like I could see why they want to focus on an action spectacle series because they don't need to do the character development because we already know who they are in the original show. And maybe kids, maybe the new audience they're targeting is too, maybe the action spectacles would attract them and not the character development. So maybe it's a good strategy. I don't know. But as evaluating this as like a work of art on its own, it's kind of frustrating. And maybe that's fine because maybe it's not ever meant to be seen as a work of art on its own. Maybe that's the point of it. I don't know. Yeah. So Megajimon 22 asked, I guess the other kids just don't care enough about Tokyo. Some heroes they are. What do you think of them bringing back Omegamon? Would you have preferred Angelomon and Angemon to appear, or Wargreymon and Metagoromon? Or the other kids do something? Yeah, I think basically any scenario would have been better than Omnimon again because it's such a retread of the early parts of the show.
I mean, Omegamon wasn't introduced until like war games, and so it doesn't really even appear. Does Omega appear in O2 at all?
I think technically it
Just the
has
movie,
that flashback to the movie where they explain the United Evolution, but that's it.
right? So they never really use it, and even here, like the kids can't reach Omegamon without divine intervention. So I think it's sort of fine, because they have like this incredible enemy that they have to defeat, and there was no way they were going to have like a Digimon that's absorbing all this data from all of Tokyo and just have it be like a champion. So I think they had to make it Omega, and then they're not going to have like two ultimates or all the ultimates be Omega at the first appearance of Omega.
Well, I think that could have been the arc of like a bunch of Ultimates teaming up to defeat a single Omega. That is kind of they don't actually defeat Black Hole Greymon, but in Zero Two, like once all six of the kids reach Teenage Evolution and reach Ultimate, they're finally able like they lose against Black Hole Greymon after episode, and then once they finally get all three Ultimates, they're able to actually fight off Black Hole Greymon to a standstill.
I mean, they were barely able to take on the ultimate in the previous episode.
Well,
So all of
yeah,
a sudden they're going to be able to take on the Mega form.
I think that would have been that could have been a satisfying conclusion. Like if they actually showed teamwork and they showed us and it felt plausible they were working as a team and everything. I think it's possible, but I think to your point of like how they don't, like you mentioned how they don't bring Omnimon or Megamon in the original series much, and it's just in the movies basically. That's why it worked so well because it was so restrained and didn't show up so often.
I mean, that's what they did with Magna Angemon. He shows up twice in the entire thing. Well, three times.
So the fact that we're in episode 18 and we've seen Omegamon twice, it's like it has no impact now. And my only hope is that like we're supposed to not think it has much impact now. Maybe it's more like he's kind of more like a series mascot, like Agumon was. Like Omegamon's on the cover of the first booster set for the card game, right? So like maybe it's more like Omegamon is a mascot for the series, but he's not the equivalent of Magna Angemon from the original show or the equivalent of Omegamon from the original movies. He's not the big trump card that comes out and is a big deal. I guess my only hope is that like they're being savvy and smart. That like there's going to be a different big trump card that is going to be a big deal. The worst case scenario that could happen is that they're going to just keep pulling out the Megamon card every 15 episodes.
I don't think they can now that TK is digitized. It probably ends in the digital world. I mean, I don't think Jedi can fly the helicopter in the real world where Kyrie is, and in the digital world where TK is now allegedly. Like, without the feathers, and because if you take the feathers out of it, they cannot. First, they can't even get to Mega, or at least they haven't by themselves yet outside of the first episode. But it's just they still have something to work towards, so they just can't pull it out whenever.
Well, I know, but like I'm worried that like in 15 episodes they'll keep pulling it. Like I just don't think if they expect us to keep getting hype about a Megamon, we've already lost all hype for that. We've already lost. He isn't exciting at this point. So I'm hoping they know that and they understand that and they're building up to something that is going to be exciting.
I mean, they could just give everyone their megas and have them actually do something more than one battle or two battles from Try.
Yeah.
And that could be more exciting. I'm sure there's a lot of people that want to see Rosemon in action.
No, no one wants Rosemon. Just give her Bancho Lilymon instead of Lilymon.
I want to see Serafimon actually do something.
I don't understand how you like try, considering how much they shafted Serafimon. He doesn't even get like a special placement and like a special like it's just like, oh, Patamon, can you digivolve? Yeah, I can do it. I'm Serafimon now.
Patamon doesn't get anything in the entire series, first of all. He dies whenever he digivolves the champion.
You're not a real TK or Patamon fan if you like try. That's all I'm saying.
Oh boy.
Okay, next comment. From Digimon 22, remember when Ultimate level was special? And they mean Ultimate in Japanese, so Ultimate slash Mega. Venom Vandamon, the Dark Master, Saber Leomon, Millenniumon, Black Rock Greymon, Daemon, Belial Devimon. Wasting the narrative threat of Ultimate on an episodic enemy seems like a waste to me. How can we be scared of Devimon? I think, yeah, like I was saying before, we shouldn't get too worried about being scared of Devimon. Let's get to that, and then we'll see if we're scared by what they've delivered or not. I think they could still build up the threat, and whatever larva he's harvesting can be threatening. I assume.
Do you have any theories on what the larva will be?
I don't know. I think it's gonna be a new Digimon.
Okay.
I would be disappointed if it's a recurring one. Like how Aizmon evolved into Orochimon before it went back to Nidogmon. Like, don't give us some old school Digimon unless it's a really cool old school Digimon. If it's just Orochimon, don't even bother.
I mean, it could be Myosmon.
I
Back again.
guess. I think it's gonna be a Mega.
I think they'll probably end up just absorbing Devimon,
Right.
and then there goes Devimon. and that's
Yeah.
the extra 6 seconds of data that they needed. It's all from Devimon.
So I think the narrative threat of an ultimate in a single episode at that point, like I was saying in the beginning, like, I think this episode we would have been mostly fine with if there had been the spectacle to match it. Like I think the threat of an ultimate in a single episode would have felt satisfying if this was this huge animation moment. If this was like an episode that felt like it was a huge spectacle, we would have been fine with that. I think it's only because it was lackluster that it's like everything else falls apart. So that's my guess in the original plan of things. Like it's the only reading I can see where it actually feels like it makes sense and isn't extremely incompetent. At Empire Will said, "Where did all the people come from, and how do they find their phones so quickly? Also, it seems like we have an answer to why the kids are digivolving like this is important. That's because nothing else other than Omega Mind is important." Yep, yep, yep.
Certainly not Bertramon.
Who even remembers Bergemon? At Leo Sketch, Taichi and Yamato have reached Omega twice now. Devimon's not a scary threat anymore since their team can all go ultimate such perfect. Now that's off my chest. It seems like the other kids saw that fight. Think there'll be more chosen children in this anime? It explained the pacing. It's a possibility.
I think that'd be too many characters if all of a sudden we start getting, 5 new kids that are chosen. I think it'll be they've already shown they can't. They're not willing to spend the time to develop these 6. So to add 5 more fresh that have no backstory from previous series to draw upon, I think it would be very odd.
I mean, to me, the biggest question is like, would they continue the nostalgia by introducing the 02 kids, or would they have it be completely fresh, new characters? And I don't know. I don't. They'd have to be really good characters for it to warrant skipping past the 02 kids, because I feel like if they introduce new characters who aren't the 02 kids, 02 fans are going to be upset that they didn't give them those characters. So I don't know. It would definitely what I want most in the show right now is a shakeup, is a change in the status quo. So I would be excited. Like if an episode ended with a teaser of there being 4 new kids or 5 new kids or 6 new kids, I would definitely be very excited and thrilled to see what happens next. I don't know if that actually means it would be good, but I would definitely be excited, and that's kind of what I'm missing now is excitement.
Yeah.
Yeah. Akhtar Raikit said, ever since Try, Toei seems to be far more interested in using the Digimon Adventure brand to pander to nostalgia over telling good stories. Has the reboot affected your confidence in the Toei and Digimon brand? Would you still want more Digimon reboots or sequels after this? I feel like this is like the with this and Last Evolution Kizuna, it's like, okay, Adventure has been done. Like, depending how this show goes, like I could see it ending at a point where we want more along this line, like a continuation of this story. I could see that. That's a possibility, depending on how we feel at the end of the series. But aside from that, but I also push back a little bit about like the maybe not push back because like I do think ever since Try like Toei, I think it's true they've been only interested in using the Digimon brand to pander to nostalgia aside from Atmon, which was like the one instance of Digimon recently where they tried to like invest in a new story, a new audience and stuff. But also I feel like when you look at what Toei has, like when they have properties like Precure to compare against, like it is like Digimon. What is the purpose of Digimon aside from reactivating that old audience with nostalgia?
Yeah, I feel like there's a time period where if they had if they were cranking out shows like when Tamers came out, then Frontier, if they were like continuing that schedule, I feel like they wouldn't have to rely on nostalgia. But I mean, Fusion came out in like what, or it ended in 2012. Appon came out in 2016, and then nothing except Try, which like one film every few months. So they kind of have to because they don't have like a new version of Digimon to use yet.
Well, yeah, I mean, Atmon was kind of trying to be that, and I don't think it, based on like how it didn't seem like the like meet the merch and like cards and stuff around Atmon didn't seem like they really succeeded that much. So I think that was kind of the nail in the coffin for Digimon doing something other than nostalgia. And I don't know. I feel like at this point, Digimon kind of is a nostalgia brand, and that's kind of all it is. And I think that's in a similar position to stuff like Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball. Like you don't expect Dragon Ball to exist aside from continuation of the original story in in a way that reactivates nostalgia. You don't expect Sailor Moon to exist except in a way that's like, oh cool, we're doing some anniversary project or whatever. Like it's so like I think that's the place that Digimon exists in pop culture. I don't think it is going to be like a Pokemon or a Pretty Cure slash Precure, where it is constantly churning out enough new stuff that the new stuff is accessible on its own. Right. I think that's kind of just how it is. And I don't know. It's possible it could change if like 5 years from now they do something new like Atmon and it's a mega hit. That's possible, but I don't think it's likely.
I think they'll need a simul dub in order to do that. I feel like part of the reason why Amon wasn't that popular is that it was just sub, so the dub audience kind of left out.
Well, I mean, it wasn't even subbed officially until years later. So like it but I also, I mean, mainly I'm talking about success in Japan. Like I don't think it was success in Japan enough to warrant being confirmed in Japan. So even aside from that question of localization, it yeah.
I would
And
like some sequels though. I wouldn't mind a Frontier sequel, even like a movie like for years later,
yeah, I think all of the stories basically like could carry sequels.
except Data Squad.
If Data Squad could carry a sequel, it could if they wanted to, but I don't know if they are. I think we've seen that like in terms of whenever they do sales of like modern like Blu-ray sets and stuff of the original shows, it's like Adventure always outperforms everything by an extreme degree. So it's like doing a sequel to any other season, I think it would be such a smaller audience compared to Adventure that I think it is a tough sell.
Yeah.
So yeah. So, second last comment from Enya and Nat was not a question, just want to let you know I'm glad the effort you put into Putages. I'm getting off the remake due to totally losing interest in actually watching it, but I'll still tune in to listen to your takes. Thanks for the hard work. And that's, well, first off, thank you for that comment. But I mean, it's sad to see people feel like they're kind of finally reaching the point of exhaustion. I feel like this is the first point in the series that reminds me of people falling off a try, which I feel like more so happened because it was gaps between the movies and people. It's not like people ever hit a point where they're like, I'm going to stop watching Try now. It was more like they watched a movie and then didn't hear about the next one and then, didn't watch it right away. And then months had passed or whatever. And yeah, I don't know. I hope this is a single blip in the radar and that eventually the show bounces back from this. I actually went through and gathered the Twitter polls I've been doing each week with asking people to rate the episodes out of 5 stars. I went through and actually like averaged the ratings and then plotted a graph. And it's basically like almost every week. Every week has had an average of 4 or above, aside from that must have been the Soar episode that dropped a little bit before the 4, dropped a little bit below the 4, and then this episode dropped below 3. So like it definitely dropped a lot. Like looking at the graph, you can see it drop a lot, but it didn't. Like I expected. Like looking at the ratings, like the number one, like the most common rating is 2.5 stars. Oh wait, I just realized I entered this poll wrong. It's supposed to be 2 stars or lower as the last poll choice, but I wrote it as 2.5 stars. Oops. Anyway, yeah, so like it definitely is the lowest, but like it's not the lowest by that extreme a margin. So like I think I'm hopeful the next episode can rebound and we'll look back on this as just a single blip and it won't color our entire take on the series too much. But I think my expectations for the series are lowering each week.
I feel like we're at a turning point, and I think hopefully I'm confident it will turn around. If there is a moment for it to turn around, I think it will be in the next like 3 episodes. But I think even people are going to listen in just for your takes and to see appreciate your hard work. Hopefully that turnaround will be evident and they'll be able to come back.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, if people see that we're excited and that hopefully can draw people back.
They could murder a Megamon on the next episode and then get trending on Twitter and everyone would come back.
Yeah, maybe because we know Leomon's coming back. Maybe instead of Leomon dying, Megamon dies, and Taichi and Yamato also die once Megamon dies, and then that's how they subvert things and shake things up. I think I'm like slowly transitioning to like this is a fine series. It's not the series that I hoped it would be that would like get people who like this is the show to show people who don't know about Digimon or don't care about Digimon. This thing will get them into it. It's more like, okay, is it a fun ride for Digimon fans? Maybe. That's it.
Yeah, I think part of that's because no one really knew what we were getting into.
Yeah.
So expectations are everywhere,
Yeah.
and that's never going to satisfy the majority of people.
So the last comment was from friend of the show and previous guest at Writer Vry. Jeff, why did you do this, Mr. Jeff?
Jeff, question?
I'm sorry.
Why would you do this to me?
I feel worse about the fact we've been recording for an hour and 50 minutes about this episode that we did not like, and it's been days since we saw. So on that note, is there anything else about this episode that we didn't talk about?
I think we covered it. I'm excited to see what Digimon becomes of this larva. I'm pulling for Myosmon, but also hoping for something new. I'm curious to see the kids make their way toward Devimon's Rapunzel castle.
Yeah, the castle is a little too Rapunzel for me.
Devimon's gonna let down his hair.
The next episode teaser is the texts or the narration we got was that Taichi and Yamato sneak into the enormous Valvemon, and it seems like it's gonna be Leomon and a bunch of Bull Digimon. So I don't know. We're gonna get into endless Leomund dying memes. Like I'm sure, and I'm sick of the Leomund dying memes.
Do you think they'll play into it? Like they'll have him trip and they'll be like, "Oh no, he's dead." And he just pops up like, "Oh no, I'm fine. I'm
Oh
okay,
no,
guys."
his test score is falling.
Oh boy. And then they'll have like a cat stab him or punch him in the chest, and he'll be like, "Oh wow, you're really strong."
I don't know. I'm going into it cynical. I'm going into it expecting to not be surprised, and maybe they'll do something cool with it. Maybe they'll do it at a moment where it actually is surprising. Because I don't know why you even bother to do it at this point unless it actually is surprising. If I had to take a guess, I would assume they're not going to kill him this time around. They're going to let him survive, and then later he'll come back and die, like the original show.
Possible.
So, if you had to rate this episode out of 5 stars,
I think I'm gonna go with a low 3.
okay, so like an average,
I mean, I was considering a 2, but I feel like a 2 is really harsh.
yeah.
So maybe 2.5.
I'm gonna go with a 1 because I can't really imagine an episode getting worse. So,
Okay, that's fair.
I mean, it could be worse if it's like outright offensive or like makes us like hate the characters or something, or like they just do something that's just completely out of character or something. But
It was a filler episode that was meant to be like the climax. It's just it's their weird emotion.
yeah, so I know your MVP is Omegamon's cape.
Yeah, I'll do the Taylor for a Mega One.
um, I have no one in mind. No one shown. No one shined. Was there anything redeemable in this episode? Was there anyone good?
Um,
No, there was nothing good. No MVP.
no, not even Kyrie's mom.
No.
She's on the PETA watch now.
Also, it's Kari, not Kyrie. This is not Kingdom Hearts.
I did like how she went around saying hi, Kari,
Oh
but it
god.
just sounded like she's like, "Hi, Kari,
Oh boy.
hi."
That's not what happened, but okay. We're at the end of the show. What do you want to recommend?
So I have been. So I'm kind of. I think I know what you're gonna say. So I want to do something different. So I actually like I got an ad on Instagram, but last week or so for a recently translated series on webtoons, and so I'm gonna recommend Omniscient Reader. It's about this guy who's been reading a manga that's about the world ending and how to survive it, and he's like the only reader, and then the world starts to end exactly how it's written, but slightly different, and so he's like the only person who has knowledge of how to get through it. And it's really dark, and it's kind of, I say Death Note-esque because like it's dark, people are dying left and right, and there's a character who like knows way more than other people, but I'm really enjoying it, and so I'm gonna recommend that.
Fine. Fine. If you really need to read webtoons instead of reading series in the app that I make, sure. I mean, sure. That's how you be supportive. Okay. Okay.
What's your recommendation, Jeff?
I assumed you were going to recommend Genshin Impact, so I was going to ride that
I mean,
wave.
I will also recommend Genshin Impact.
I haven't. I introduced you to it, and I thought I was the one playing it a lot, and then you went and played it like nonstop instead of unpacking for like 50 hours straight.
I think you're still a little bitter that I got a 5-star on my first pull.
I am a little better. It wasn't even the first like in the first temple. It was like literally the first thing that popped up.
Yeah.
But you don't have Diluc, so I don't know how you pronounce his name. A lot of Chinese names, so it's hard to pronounce.
I think in game it says Diluc.
Well, I have Diluc, so that's all that matters.
What you have though? I
Yeah.
guess we haven't compared teams.
Well, on my second account once I switched to PS4.
Oh boy.
But also he's very hot from the front. He has a ponytail that's not that hot from the back, so I'm kind of like actually playing as him. I've cooled down a lot. Anyway, Genshin Impact is a basically a gotcha version of Breath of the Wild. It's very Breath of the Wild inspired. There's a lot of discourse about whether it's copying other games too much, and I think that's kind of silly. I think it is. It wears its heart on its sleeve. It's definitely clear where its inspirations come from, and it's not hiding them. And but yeah, it's very similar to Breath of the Wild. It has a lot of that same feel of exploration. There's lots of fun things to do, but it also has some interesting gotcha elements. I mean, I think we will have to see how it feels in the long term about like actually playing regularly. But I think for now, it basically feels in the same way that like Final Fantasy 14 is an MMO that is basically a single player game that you can play, like play a chunk of story, then new story comes out, you play a chunk of story, and then the fact that it's online is kind of secondary to that a little bit. Feels like that's how this is. It's like mainly a single player game that you occasionally do some gotcha stuff, and maybe that's the end game or whatever. But so far, you've played a bunch more than me. I feel like you have not even run into the like in-game grind stuff. You're still doing the single player content.
Right.
So it has a lot of single player content, and you can play all that for free. There are lots of fancy hot characters to get from the gacha, but they give you a lot of free characters that are the basic archetypes. And I think the most interesting thing about the game to me is the standard gacha games have the element, triangle, kind of like the weapon triangle from Fire Emblem. And instead of doing that standard approach, it's more like the elements interact with each other. So like if you make someone wet, then you can use a ice attack, and then that freezes them. And I don't remember all the combinations, but like if you hit someone with fire and then with electricity, then electricity will do extra damage. So like you're incentivized to swap between characters rapidly while you're fighting, so you can like do elemental combos and stuff. And I think it's a really cool concept and not something I'd ever seen before. There's some concern right now that's constantly evolving about the fact that it's a game developed by a Chinese company, which means it is controlled a little bit by the Chinese government, which means that you can't say the words Hong Kong or Taiwan in game, and the fact that it is censoring stuff like that is pretty gross and disgusting, but also like that's kind of, I think, necessary by the fact that it is a Chinese company. And I don't know where I stand with like, should we boycott all things that come from China because of that? I don't think I'd go so far. Like, but I don't know. I understand people who do not want to support it because of those concerns. So I don't know. It's complicated, but it's a fun game. It's good. It looks great, and you can play a lot of it for free.
And a lot of different play styles. So the main character has a sword, and there's also characters that are mages. You can also play as a character with a bow and arrow, and then you have great swords. And you can switch between these characters and build your party. So you're swapping between different play styles all the time.
Yeah, and I think it surprisingly compared to it's interesting how all the characters feel unique and feel like there's so much love poured into all these different characters. So it's fun. It's good. And that brings us to the end of the show. Last week's Digiprompt was in honor of the first occurrence of Metal Greymon's Giga Destroyer. What specific instance of a special attack in Digimon did you find the most memorable, and why? And my favorite response came in from friend of the show and past guest Jacob Chapman at Weebservations on Twitter, and he said, "Gotta be Beelzemon using Fist of the Beast King in Tamers. Unexpected, badass, and ultimately heartbreaking." I should have known when I asked this question that would be the best answer, because yeah, it is, I think, like maybe possibly the strongest moment in the entire Digimon franchise. Like there's so much build up to it, and it works so well on so many different levels. But anyway, this week's Digiprompt is in honor of this week's episode. What is the absolute worst episode in a Digimon season that you otherwise love? So a season of Digimon that you love, but an episode that you think is the absolute worst. Send your Digiprompt responses and general feedback to podages@gmail.com, podages on Twitter, or in the episode comments on our website, podages.com. If this is your first episode, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, or in traditional podcast apps. If you want to support the podcast, share it with your friends who don't just sit back and watch when you're sucked up into an ominous portal. And please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps out. I'm definitely Jeff on Twitter. You can also check out Love It a Wee Bit, a general anime podcast, which has not an episode come out that recently because I've been busy with moving and stuff, but there'll be episodes soon. We've banked up a lot of great episodes. So, Erik, thank you for coming on and recording with me until 3 a.m. Oh, God.
No problem.
It's your podcast debut.
I know. After being shouted out so many times, my boyfriend said this, my boyfriend said that.
Not always positively, because most of the comments are about how you try incorrectly.
Well, it's either that or you stealing my jokes and posting them on Twitter.
Okay. Wow. It's a creative brainstorming.
I'm sure. I'm sure it is.
So where can people find you if they want to follow you on the internet?
They can find me on Twitter, not really tweeting, but liking one of your tweets occasionally here and there if it warrants a like. I know there are some coffee jokes that are getting retweeted every once in a while for no reason. But besides that, I guess people can also find me on Twitch. I'm still baby streamer, so there's still a lot of kinks being worked out, but I'm on Twitch at Leo Unleashed, doing a variety of different games. So if they're really interested, they can go see there.
And it sounds like you're considering streaming Genshin Impact?
Yeah, I was thinking doing Genshin Impact, and also because it's October, probably doing maybe some spooky games. I'm not sure. I really like horror movies and such. And so I kind of feel like I'm desensitized, so I don't think people are going to get those scream reactions they're looking for.
I mean, if there's a Halloween Town game,
I would play. But there is a new game called Plasmaphobia. That's like a ghost hunting game that's been pretty popular. So I'll probably be playing that with some friends online. or playing Among Us like everyone seems to be playing right now. I'm still working out what I'm going to be usually streaming, so if they happen to be on Twitch and they want to come say hi, then that's where they can find me.
All right, so everyone, thanks for listening, and I'll be back with another guest next week to talk about episode 19, Howl Juoken. Bye.
Bye.
And remember, never stop Digivolving.
Someone just sent me a message on Instagram.
Okay.
Do you want me to read it since we're recording?
I don't know. What kind of message is
It
it?
said, I would like to know if you would like to be my sugar baby. For a start, I promise I will pay you $500 for weekly allowances if that's going to be enough. What's your counteroffer to that?
I have no counteroffer. Pixel is extremely like, why are you guys talking? I need to be part of this.
Did you hear him earlier? He was meowing as he came back into the room.
He was meowing outside the door to the office, and I let him in, and now he's just sitting on my lap and rubbing up against me.
He came into the room, meowed, jumped into the closet, and then ran to your door.
Oh boy. Well, hopefully he's not too audible on the mic right now. He is kind of purring a little bit. Anyway.
Gatomon is appearing early, apparently.
Okay. Oh god. He is not Gatomon. He is not as graceful as Gatomon. So as soon as Nihonmon talked in the scene, I was like, this is probably going to be his only line. And it was. And that's the amount of characterization we get for the villains in the show, I guess.
Now, is that the same voice actor as Jimmy Kudo?
Yes, everyone's Jimmy Kudo. People aren't going to get that.
We can explain it to them.
Okay, for context, so
I am very good at
picking
up voice actors in anime ever watching them.
Well, also for context, you mainly prefer to watch things dubbed. So you've watched most anime dubbed, and especially a lot of the anime you've watched dubbed has been fairly recent anime, I would say.
Yes and no.
Well, I mean to clarify that in that a lot of the stuff you watched has been from Funimation in a modern era. So they do have a lot of the same voice actors. Right. So a lot of the shows you recognize, and you're like, oh, it's this person from this other show or this person from Persona or whatever. But then you're bragging about how good you are at recognizing them, but half the time you're like, is that Jimmy Kudo? Is that Jimmy Kudo? It's never Jimmy Kudo.
Well, most of the time I throw the Jimmy Kudo as a joke out now.
Oh, sure.
But oftentimes it is the voice actor for Jimmy Kudo from Case Closed.
It's always Jimmy Kudo.
Detective Conan, Case Closed.
You can't even decide what to call it.
Well, I just wanted to give people context because they have I don't know if you know this. You may not be aware.
Well, I don't know who Jimmy Kudo is. I know Junoichi Kudo. Is that actually his name?
But the dub has a different name than the sub.
Oh, sorry, it's not Junoichi. That's the name of Joey in Yu-Gi-Oh! It's Shinichi Kudo, right?
At Dak and Jackster said perfunctory, unneeded rematch.
I've been reading Dak and Jackster's username so many times that I've kind of forgotten what the name of the actual franchise is. That it's Jack. Wait,
and Dax. Isn't it Jack and Daxter?
It's Jack and Daxter. It's Jack, right?
It's Jack and Daxter. I just looked it up.
Okay, yes, because I'm also confused because I've been watching Vanderpump Rules where there's a character named Jax. So I'm like, is it Jax and Daxter? No, it's Jack and Daxter.